I'm going to call to order the City Council Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee. It's Tuesday, July 28th at 5:30. And this evening, before I get into entertaining a motion on the agenda, I'm going to briefly turn the floor to Councilor Brown McKnight to say a few words. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. So we wanted to pause at the opening of this meeting to just take a minute to express condolences to the family of Shiloh Skalka, who recently lost her life while riding a bike just steps from this building that the meeting is taking place in here today. All of us here and beyond spend so much time thinking about how we can make all kinds of transportation better and safer for Burlingtonians, and tragedies like this make it painfully clear that we still have a long way to go in achieving that goal. I live by the belief that children, and that includes teenagers in this case, really belong to all of us. It's the responsibility of every one of us, as well as our community as a whole, to make our city a safe place for kids to live and grow up. And so while the details of this event are still emerging, it's clear that as a collective, we let Shiloh and her family down. So I encourage everyone to reflect on that and to bring her memory forward into our work. I also encourage everyone to read her obituary that was just published this week and consider supporting the GoFundMe that her family has set up to establish a memorial fund in her honor. I'd also like to express some gratitude for the city staff, both Colby Dallaire and Stephen Harnois, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, among others, who sprang into action from their jobs, again, right in this building that you all are sitting in to provide care. So thank you all for your bravery and your compassion. And with that, I would like to suggest that we observe a moment of silence for Shiloh. And Councilor Barlow, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for those comments. And with that, I will get into our agenda. So our first item on our agenda is the agenda, and I would entertain a motion.
I would move adopt the agenda as posted on Civic.
Second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 That's unanimous. Next on our agenda then is adoption of the minutes from our June 23rd meeting.
I would move the adoption of the minutes as posted.
For a second. Seth. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of those minutes indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous as well. Next we have public forum. And I know someone in the room is going to speak to an item on our deliberative agenda. Is there anybody else who wants to speak in public forum? No one here in the room, but I see former Councilor Sharon Busher online. Sharon, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I wanted to just speak to Chapin, Director Spencer's communication regarding the solid waste tax and funding for that and recycling. And I think that, it captures a lot of change and variables, and it's incomplete because Casella's doing some homework that will be informative and will be reported back to the TOOC. Maybe it's captured in one of the categories, but a while ago when everything started to get more expensive, there were a number of people who looked at options about what to do with their trash and recycling, and made a decision that the companies that came had some restrictions, so it seemed to be more reasonable if you didn't have a lot, if you didn't generate a lot, you could take your trash and recycling and compost to a site in Burlington, South Burlington, wherever, Williston, wherever you go. And I wasn't sure if that was captured in this with the reduction. I don't know how many people did it. I did it and still do. So that's one thing that I wanted to say. I don't know. Maybe you did a survey, which whisked by me and I didn't see and didn't weigh in on, but to try to get that information. But that's one thing. The other thing that I know happens in my neighborhood is that if there are a bunch of people that are older or small households, some of them, for recycling at least, use just one toter and combine. They think they're helping by doing that so that you don't have to stop at every spot. Maybe that's not helpful. I mean, it's certainly you're still getting paid because you're getting that money from the trash pickup. But I think there are a lot of things that are happening that people do. One, thinking that they're helpful, the other to save money, and I'm not sure about there might be a whole bunch of other reasons. And I mean, the complexion, the times are difficult, and I think people try to make things work financially for themselves. And that's not to say that people don't want to support the city overall, but it is challenging when you have to pay a tax that you for something that, and now this goes against like the school tax, but anyways, it is challenging when it's a fee for service, basically, if you have to end up paying that when you're not using that service. And you are paying elsewhere, because when you go to any of these drop-off sites, you pay. And my understanding is that somehow or other that money gets back to the community. So I guess I'd like to understand more fully if I'm wrong in that assumption, and if the city doesn't get any funding back from the solid waste district. I go to South Burlington because that's closer to me than downtown. But I just feel like, there are a lot of options out there. People are trying to do what's best for them and what is financially fair to them, but they're not trying to undermine the city or the services that you provide generally to everybody. So I'm hoping there's a way to navigate this, but wanted to add those other little wrinkles to the complex equation that brings you to the decrease in the number of households that currently you're picking up trash and recycling from. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there anyone else online? There's no public forum, there isn't. Okay, well then I will go ahead and close public forum and start our deliberative agenda. And the first item on our deliberative agenda is a Lake Street traffic calming resolution that was passed by the Ward 3 MPA. And Robert Sand is here to tell us about it, and then we're going to have a brief discussion about it. We're not going to be taking the action specified in the resolution tonight, but we're going to begin the discussion.
Thank you for having me, Robert Sand, Ward 3. If it's all right, I'd like to talk about what prompted the resolution.
Sure.
And that is the extraordinary speeds that particularly motorcycles are going on what I'll call the waterfront corridor. So Lake Street to Penny Lane behind the water treatment plant and the Burlington Pier. And I'm sorry to say this in light of how this meeting started. It is a fatality waiting to happen. And it's both personal to me because I spend a lot of time down by the waterfront, and it's relates to a lot of my professional work. So I was the elected state's attorney in Windsor County for 15 years. I worked for the Governor's Highway Safety Council for 4 years. So I think it's worth asking, why are these motorcycles going so fast? In part, it's become the culture of these young men. They gather behind the water treatment plant, socialize, more power to them, and then they bomb down Lake Street, turn on College, and zoom up Battery, somewhat ironically heading toward the police station. I don't have a radar gun, but I'm pretty confident that some of them are hitting 60+ miles an hour. That is not a speeding ticket. That is a crime. That's the crime of excessive speed. So part of the culture, they know with near perfect certainty that there'll be no consequences. There isn't speed enforcement. There isn't enforcement of their aftermarket mufflers that are excessively loud. There isn't enforcement of their obstructed license plates. I believe that a credible risk of being caught is a more effective deterrent, actually, than punishment. There's zero risk of being caught. And finally, there are no traffic calming measures. So there are a lot of pedestrians here. Pedestrians cross from Foam over to Waterfront Park. We know somebody wiped out the railroad crossing there a couple of years ago. So no traffic calming measures at all. Meaning no disrespect to anyone. But since I first raised this issue, the only thing that's happened is that Lake Street has been repaved, which allows the motorcycles to travel even faster. I will also note there are a lot of teenagers riding e-motos and e-bikes who are starting to imitate the young men, and they're predominantly young men, on their motorcycles. And I'm just not sure that's the kind of role modeling we want. I acknowledge this is a challenge for law enforcement. Motorcycles go really fast. The license plates are barely perceptible. And many of them have a device that actually folds them up so you can't see them anymore. We certainly don't want a high-speed chase in Burlington, but it is not an impossible law enforcement challenge. I've been talking with Deputy Chief John Young, and I appreciate his concern. Even intermittent enforcement would make a huge difference. There just isn't anybody there. In my lay opinion, the solution is a traffic calming measure. And so whether that's speed bump, speed hump, narrowing of the roadway, I'm not an expert in that aspect of highway safety, but if any of you have any doubt about this, I would encourage you on any evening when it isn't raining to just go hang out at Waterfront Park. It's extraordinary. And I want to say, this is not like the person who buys a condo next to a pickleball court and then complains about the noise. This has gotten progressively worse in the 6 years or so that I've been there. So I really hope that some kind of remedial measure can happen, that DPW and Burlington Police can find a joint way to address this problem. I acknowledge that motorcycles are zooming all over Burlington. If I had to bet, I would bet most of them don't live in the city and they come into town to show off. And it is, I'll avoid the inappropriate reference to a hand gesture that I think they're doing. They're openly defying and almost asking or taunting law enforcement. And I think people should be accountable for criminal behavior. If you're driving 60 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, that's a crime and you're endangering the welfare of people who are walking in the neighborhood. So I hope something can happen.
Thank you for that introduction. For those watching online or watching later, there is an attachment. The resolution is attached to our agenda, and it has 4 resolve clauses essentially. It asks for a formal traffic safety assessment in that area by the lakefront. Interim traffic calming measures. Third, it asks for a permanent traffic calming plan, and 4, it asks for a report back to the MKA. So, like I said, the introduction of this item, this isn't something I don't think we're going to do tonight to act on this, but we wanted to queue it up for DPW to perhaps, respond initially and have some suggestions on how to move forward with this.
Great, thanks for being here. And Jason Spencer, Director of Public Works. So this is a traffic calming request that is in queue. Lake Street is a street that has had traffic calming. It was the first street to be 20 miles an hour in the city of Burlington. It was developed with narrow lanes, 10 to 11 foot lanes, and has a mid-block bump out right by a Deep City restaurant. Clearly, those traffic calming efforts have not achieved the desired outcome with some cross section of users up and down Lake Street. I will say just personally, eating outside at Skinny Pancake got to experience, loud cars, bikes. It made it hard to have a conversation out on the patio there. So I've experienced it firsthand. We will take a look at the additional potential of traffic calming that can be done there. I will say that I am feeling stronger and stronger that the lack of traffic enforcement is falling disproportionately on our department to compensate to levels we do not have the funding to manage or the time and effort. That there's a multi-legged stool of education, enforcement, and engineering to create safe roads. And when we don't have the enforcement, then we are chasing very expensive civil approaches to a very narrow section of the populace that does not comply with the general order of the operations of the road. So that said, we will take a look at our role in this, but would encourage the body politic to look at how we can address enforcement. We've had some conversation about whether camera enforcement of speeds in the city is something we would explore, or do we ask the police, or do they get outside resource to help given their under-resourced current situation?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I was going to open it up for some questions from the committee, and then maybe we could have whatever response.
I guess that the one question has to do with your timing in terms of things that you just talked about, and the second would have to do with the relation with the police department and us being able to figure out some sort of enforcement piece of that triad. And we've had this conversation at the ordinance committee with regard to the e-motos, and we're, it's all part and parcel. And I totally appreciate the fact that we do not have an expenditure problem in the city. We have a revenue problem and a staff problem. And this articulates that very, very well. I do not know how to crack that nut, and I do not have a treasury in my back pocket or rest in the other pocket. So, yeah.
I guess take Councilor Bergman's questions and we'll
Sure. I will check with staff on timing for data collection. We have our policy a very data-driven prioritization process. If the 85th percentile speed, is over the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, then it can qualify for traffic calming. If there's a history of bike and pedestrian or vehicular crashes on the corridor, then it can qualify for traffic calming. I need to find out when that data will be collected, and I will get a response back to the committee and to Ron.
Yes. Go ahead, Becca.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing this resolution forward. I mean, I completely support all the traffic calming measures that you have on there. And I also respect, Chapin, that you have a process for that. And I'm glad to hear it is in the queue. I also completely agree with the three-legged stool concept. And so I guess following up on something Councilor Bergman just mentioned, this topic comes up a lot. I asked Councilor Singh to bring it up on the public safety agenda, but what I'm curious about is, does the city, it seems like it would be smart to have a cross-departmental task force about this. It doesn't sound like that exists, but I would be curious to hear more about what regular checkpoints DPW has with the police department. Because if those aren't happening, I think that's where I would love to see this start. Because if you both are kind of just working in your own silos, then yeah, DPW just gets kind of, it just keeps, the bills keep adding up and the projects keep adding up, but we need that partnership of enforcement and education. And I just, this is a pattern throughout the city. Everywhere you look, people are breaking the rules and there's no consequences for it. So I would love to see a sit down between the chief of police and you, Director Spencer, and kind of a sharing of ideas and a prioritization of the spots where we do need that extra enforcement. And then if needed, the state of Vermont can send, we could ask them to send resources to do traffic enforcement. So that's where I'd like to see us head. But I think my question for now is just, is any of that already happening?
Thank you. Yes, Councilor McKnight, certainly frequent conversations at my level with the chief. I know our technical team does connect with the police. I will say that in my history, there are times when the police have a traffic safety officer. They do not have that currently. There was a history where we had a multi-stakeholder Safe Streets Collaborative that involved the police department, advocates, transportation advocates, DPW, and many parties at the table to do information, encouragement, education, all that community work. From what I understand from the chief, there just are not the resources to do that now. If there is interest at the council and administration level to pay for state police to come in and help out, we can certainly have that conversation. So happy to be a supportive, engaged partner in the conversation to how to do more enforcement in Burlington.
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I can't think of a question. Thanks for bringing this to us. I haven't really heard it as much recently, but I'm on College Street. It's kind of in the same thing up basically. Yeah, it was there were similar situations that were happening beforehand, and I appreciate your comment on the reality that when it comes to enforcement, especially in urban streets, the reality is that attempting to enforce things like speeding can be just as dangerous as the speeding itself, especially when we're dealing with folks who are already disregarding the law. And as always, I'm sympathetic to DPW and everything that they have to deal with, but these infrastructure change the traffic calming is, in my opinion, at least the way that we solve this. I think considering bringing a task force back together is a good idea. But as you did, I'm just raising caution around how much we want to consider spending the resources on enforcement, when I think you said that talked to the department and they brought up those concerns as well when it comes to enforcement. Did you say that, or did you mishear you?
It's almost self-evident.
Yeah.
The mobility of motorcycles and their speed compared to perhaps the stationary police.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you.
My question is like, what time of day is, you said it was in the evenings, but does it start like at a certain time? And
It's rarely in the morning, unless you count 2 a.m. in the morning. I have to say, I went for a run this afternoon and there were 2 motorcycles speeding along. What happens in the evening, and what I think sets apart the waterfront park area, maybe from any other location in the city, is that they assemble behind the water treatment plant. That's part of the culture. And
your
then
time though of night?
I mean, if you are there from 6 to 9, 6 to 10, and then there's an occasional 2 a.m. There are also some cars with deliberately loud mufflers, but something about I have video. I'll spare you this evening. It's not hard to capture. May I make 2 other comments?
Sure. I have a question
I'm sorry.
for Director Spencer. Then we could
Yeah.
close with some closing comments. Thanks. I had a question of, I know in Gosport we had those rubber speed bumps that we could deploy. Do we have any of those like stockpiled somewhere you could like tack some down on the road if it, with or something, and try something like that?
Yeah, I will talk to staff. There are certain locations where those are better practice than others. If we are trying to get motorcycle compliance, they can be a challenge because you want these things to be offset from the curb to allow stormwater, and yet motorcycles can go around them.
Right.
So, there are things to consider. Happy to explore a temporary installation.
If there was something we could do to sort of address some of the concerns and address, what was called for.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for your plan to sort of examine this and look at what's possible and then report back. I guess I'll report back to this committee.
Yes.
Okay. And then go ahead.
One more piece of valuable information related to Councilmember Bergman's tough nut to crack, and there may be a nutcracker, and that is that I spoke with the sheriff last week, and there is money through the governor's highway safety program to pay overtime for police officers to do speed enforcement. It's my understanding that the governor's highway safety council representative was going to speak with I've forgotten, a sergeant maybe in Burlington Police Department, but that it's not maybe a permanent solution, but if there's money there for speed enforcement, that would be a nice first step. And quite frankly, all that needs to happen is the risk of being caught. Some intermittent enforcement, I think, makes a huge difference.
Thank you. What's the best way for us to look into that, or is BPD already looking into it?
I can certainly pass it along to the police that we had this conversation tonight.
Thank you.
John Mark, I think he's.
Yeah,
I can find the. Is that correct?
Nicole Loesch also. Nicole is doing all of our grants, right? So she could be on that.
Happy to include her as well. Yeah.
I appreciate all of your time.
I appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Stuff for us. Thank you. I guess we'll go ahead and close that item. Moving on to our next item, which is solid waste generation tax, flow control and tax structure.
Hello. How are y'all doing?
Good.
So I just wanted to give you some updates, since our last meeting in April, and many of them are listed in the memo. So I'll go through all of them, but we did take your comments that we received by the committee, listed them out in the memo. Solid waste generation tax. It is truly a tax and not a service fee. How many people are paying? How many people aren't paying? Who should be paying? Capturing self-haulers. The affordability component, and then incentivizing companies. But what it really comes down to is, options we have listed to reverse revenue trends and sustainably fund the city's recycling solid waste budget. Some of those we had listed in a previous memo, such as full control, tiering, should the city spread costs among different level tiers, and auditing of RDUs. Are we truly capturing the amount of RDUs that are being reported by property owners, landlords? We have found some discrepancies just in brief viewings of we list that the permitting inspector has supplied us. So along with that, Casella is performing an audit of our recycling collection routes to see how many residents that city recycling is actually servicing. And then we'll be able to compare that with the list that we received from P&I just to make sure all residential units are accurately reported monthly by the haulers. And then do we raise the solid waste generation tax? Do we raise it sooner and later to make up projected budget shortfalls in FY27? If we were to do that based on the number of reported RDUs currently, it would be around $12.99 per RDU. We're currently charging around $12 per. So once the audit is completed by Casella, I'll have a better, be able to make better assumptions as to how financially it will impact the recycling program, solid waste budget, and make better informed decisions on how we fix this problem. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sure. The question I have is actually the question that former Councilor Busher had with regard to the drop-off centers. So I happen to be a person who uses the drop-off center. It's actually more efficient for me to go to the South Burlington one. I don't think we are collecting any money from my drop-off of trash at that center, but I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong, and we are working with Chittenden Solid Waste District to remedy that.
Yeah.
Because some people, they bring their stuff with them maybe to Essex if they work out that way, just use that drop-off center.
Yeah. Yeah.
We definitely do collect from Burlington drop-off center,
Right.
But we are working with them to, just ask for this. You're bringing here, where you reside.
Yeah, I think it would. To making a comment, I should be paying, right? And that is where I should be paying. If we can make it like that, whether there's another form of billing that we could use as a tax, but that's harder. I think the nature of that. So
then you have to rely on the people's honesty after the first time they go. Unless they're a regular and
you're talking about a drop-off center.
At a drop-off.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that there are logistical issues that are part of that, and so I won't. I'm not trying to micromanage CSWD and us on it, but yeah, feel called on to do that. Yeah, that's my big concern, because I believe that the whole thing, that we should be capturing it from everybody in the city, because we all generate recyclables because we're human beings. So and I look forward to seeing us have that in a way. And I guess the last thing is just, I think you have to solve that before you raise, because you're always going to be in that situation, right? And it's going to be a decreasing number. It seems to be the trend. So you got to get a handle on collecting from everybody.
No, I agree. You know, between the drop-off centers and then getting the results of the audit, accurate numbers, we'll have, you know, a ballpark to start from, and then compare that to cities. Rental registry. To see where that gap is.
Great, thanks.
Any other councilors want to get in? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with Councilor Burton's comments, that yeah, that before we think about raising, as you said, make sure that we're charging the tax to everybody that should be getting, that we believe that should be getting charged, which I would agree it should be everyone. If you live in the city, because the solid waste generation tax doesn't just go to the physical service itself as hauling, it goes to facilities and soil management and all the things of everything else, and also just like the city that you live in, having recyclables not going into trash. So yeah, I guess my question is about the tiers. It doesn't talk about, like, can you go into detail on what you're thinking with the tier system?
Sure. So the tiers were similar to the tiers in the last memo, were based on what you receive for services, whether it's recycling or you don't receive recycling, you would receive a different rate based on what services you're provided. You know, the street sweeping and landfill maintenance, you do not receive city recycling. That would be one tier. By right, it should be a lower tier because you're receiving services. But we don't know what those amounts would be until we get an accurate account of how many RDUs are going to be taking place in the system. It may be easy to do if we did, you know, 18,813, where everybody pays for all services. They spread it out. All that RDU is going to be much lower cost. But if we're breaking it down into tiers, it's going to be multiple costs per tier. Like I said, without those RDUs, can't really speculate.
All right, thank you.
I don't see Councilor McKnight with a hand raised, so I'll jump in. Just raise your hand back if you want to make have questions.
Thanks, I'm good.
I also have the same concerns that Councilor Bergman raised and former Councilor Busher raised about, like, how you capture the self-haulers. And I'm wondering if there might not, you know, and it seems like that this is like a big part of the equation, because I think when we were doing consolidated collection, the number was somewhere between 15 and 20% of residents, and as costs increase, I think you're gonna see a larger percentage. And with compost, people are dragging their compost to a drop-off center. Why not take a couple bags of trash or recycling? So I'm wondering if we have to be more sort of intentional about establishing residency at the drop-off centers. Like the first time you go, you show them something that says you live in Burlington. You get a sticker or you get something, and then you have to present that, you know, or something. And I know that it's a lot of work for Chittenden County Solid Waste District, but it's a way to sort of ensure that we capture the Burlington residents that are self-hauling, and make sure that revenue gets back to Burlington in the same way it would if they were getting collected by a hauler by curbside recycling. So I don't know, we need some kind of way to ensure that, because if I know as a resident that I'm gonna pay a lower price if I say I'm from South Burlington, I'm gonna say the right thing, but I'm saying that some people are gonna game the systems. And some people might not even get that, so it has to almost be a part of the protocol of the gatekeeper. But I don't know if we're the only ones who have this issue or other municipalities, no, they're all.
That's the problem, and the piece you rightly point out is the only way to ensure that everybody who goes to South Burlington isn't a Burlington resident is to get everybody to present a license, not just the Burlington folks. And you're gonna slow down operations there, and there's gonna be a real reluctance for CSWD to wanna do that.
Right.
Because they're processing hundreds of people through,
Right.
Saturday mornings. Let's continue to talk about it. I think we hear a pretty clear, unanimous kind of desire to make sure self-haul folks are paying more, if not their full fair share of the recycling program operation and the solid waste program of the city. So let's take note of this. We'll meet again with CSWD, bring this perspective forward and see what ideas we can come up with. Certainly asking questions at other drop-off centers about where you're from is one level. Asking for proof of where you're from is a whole nother level. We'll gauge what their interest is and bring it back to you.
Or maybe you do it through some incentive, you get something if you, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's gotta be a way to like capture that.
I just want to say that I think we should also be exploring the affordability programs and that Portland, Oregon one model that you had seen. So I don't know if you mentioned that. I mean, I did mention before. I just wanted to get that out on the table. And obviously, it's part and parcel of the whole package.
Right. I appreciate you mentioning that. And I do welcome the honest conversation about is now the right time. Once we decide and develop a long-term, decades-long commitment to either consolidated collection or not doing consolidated collection, we can set up a more robust approach to affordability. As we've heard, we're the only ones who do a solid waste generation tax in Chittenden County. It makes CSWD's life much harder. If we try to bake in an affordability program for something that we know is going to last a year or two before we launch this big study, it's a heavy lift because by and large, the landlords are paying the trash bill. And so then any affordability program, how do you get it to the renters? And that's the problem we've been having with the water, and where we have to credit BED makes it a whole complex situation. So I hear you on the affordability. Let's keep thinking it through. There's no simple answer.
Yep.
I see Chair Busher has her hand raised. I'm gonna fellow chair and allow her to ask a question or make a comment. Go ahead, Chair.
Yes, because thank you. Because I've been going to South Burlington for a while, there was a period of time, Chapin, where they asked for your zip code, because they were trying to track who was using that center. And I don't know how they documented that, because I didn't have to enter it into anything. They asked me, but they were tabulating who was using South Burlington. So maybe they have a system that could be linked with zip code. I understand there's always going to be someone who is going to game or, try to circumvent the system, but I'd like to think most people will be honest and just say that's where they're from. And I think Burlingtonians, for the most part, want to pay their fair share, but they'd also like to have you recognize, you're talking about affordability, have you recognize that doing it yourself adds an affordability component that's important. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yep.
Anybody else before we close this item? No? Okay. So you'll come back to us at a future meeting?
Yes.
Do you have an idea of when?
Hopefully we get the result of the audit. Well, this coming month, August, so either August or September.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And next we have our last deliberative item, the wastewater treatment plant improvement project update.
Great. And we have Water Resources Managing Engineer Martin Lee here to provide a thorough update. You saw a very chunky memo in your packet, and we also have a presentation to kind of give the overview, which I think will be helpful for the public, and then happy to answer questions. That this is rooted in a council resolution that talked about us reporting back at 30, 60, and 90% final plans. And we are mindful of that and are here as a result.
Great, thank you. So Martin Lee, Water Resources Engineering Manager. Thank you for having me tonight. So we're going to go through the wastewater treatment facility improvements update. And this is just a summary of that memo that Chapin referenced, and we're going to be going through the card project that's in construction called Stage 0. We're going to be touching on the Stage 1 improvements, the big design project that had 20 bond approval in 2025. Review project costs and funding, discuss where we are with the construction manager at risk, the CMAR, and also talk about upcoming city council requests for all these items. So the Stage 0 project that's going on right now improves grit handling and screening at all 3 of the wastewater plants. That is the first process in the treatment system to take out rags and grit to help prevent damage to equipment downstream. And since it is the first in line, it also receives the most kind of the harshest environment, and that's why it needed to be done sooner than a lot of the other equipment. So that contract that was approved, I think it was the end of 2024, was just over $14 million, pretty hefty price tag. We do anticipate finishing the project within the 10% contingency that was also approved for that project. And it's anticipated to finish later this year. The photos here, we have the large traveling grit bridge is what it's called, being installed here at the main wastewater plant. And I saw it today, and it's just about to be started up officially. This is equipment at the north wastewater plant, smaller equipment, but still important for the system there. And that includes a smaller screen and grit equipment there, which is currently in operation. This is an overview briefly of the 2018 bond. So the Headworks project.
Could you make that bigger, Ron? So
Yeah.
maybe full screen it. Just back on that. You see that? Yeah, proceed. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so the Headworks improvements, as well as many other projects, were part of the 2018 Clean Water Bond that was approved. And in this slide, I just wanted to touch on what that previous bond included, and included quite a bit of sewer and stormwater rehabilitation. So over 8.5 miles of that. We did stormwater, green water infrastructure improvements, major SCADA improvement project at the main wastewater plant, disinfection improvements that were completed in 2021. So those projects plus the large Headworks project bring us to today. This is before 2018, and then this table is just kind of a quick representation of red being kind of the F, and orange being the D infrastructure, kind of higher risk equipment, and it improved. So after this project, we're going to be in a better spot, but we still have a lot of needs. And we presented this before, demonstrating that as every year goes by, these tables continue to populate into the orange and red side of the table. And we've had electrical hiccups this year, and continuously feel that pinch at the wastewater plants. So just a little bit more about why we need the investments now. We're replacing aged infrastructure now, and that's also what we need to do with our major upgrade that we received recent approval for, relatively recent. We need to ensure adequate treatment capacity for housing. We need to have resiliency and redundancy in our equipment, which isn't all there right now, and as well as update codes. And as we go, as we touch a space, we're improving it so that it meets modern standards. And this is the overview of the bonds, that the current bond as well as the other ones that we've talked about in the past. Just as a reminder, the current major wastewater improvements project that was approved in 2025 is what I'll get into detail about here. That main wastewater plant improvement project really sets the stage for the next project, which we're calling stage 2 here, which is pumping the east wastewater plant to the main plant. We can't pump it there unless we build this improved wastewater plant. So that's what we're doing now, and it will have added capacity as well as phosphorus improvement. So it's not just replacing equipment, we're getting significant upgrades as well. And this is kind of touching on some of the same items here. The likelihood of failure is too high for certain critical infrastructure, and we need to replace it now. It's well past 30 years, which is kind of the very end of useful life. So we've been limping along on some equipment for a while here. The new wastewater treatment plant permit that is coming out specifically is going to change our phosphorus limits. And so this new project will be implementing improved tertiary filters. So the phosphorus treatment capability is going to go get much better. We're going to have a very good phosphorus filter, which is also used in other wastewater plants around Vermont. So we're confident in the ability of that system. Plus, we did pilot testing a few years ago on it. Yeah, and so we anticipate growth in our system, and we certainly don't want to be on our heels. We're not going like above and beyond. We're reacting to what we see immediately in our future, and I'll touch more on that on the next slide. This one talks about phosphorus and just kind of a visual representation of where we are. We currently do treat for phosphorus, and this is a representation of approximately where we are on an annual basis in terms of pounds discharged to the lake per year. And then the permit limit will be below that. So we want to be comfortably below that limit, and this is where we're aiming for the blue line here. So this slide, which we've also presented in the past, gives a visual representation of what it means to bring the east plant over and some of the benefits that we'll get to improve capacity for growth. Right now, we have a monthly current value that is below the 80% threshold of where the permit limit is. So basically we have a permit limit, but we want, in order to not trigger the permit, we still need to be 20% below that limit. Otherwise, there's the requirement to start looking at wastewater treatment facility improvements. And so we're anticipating that we're gonna be reaching and going above that as we go further and get more projects coming online. And if we bring over the east wastewater plant, we actually get to add on the there's more unused capacity at the east wastewater plant, and so we get to tack that permit onto the main wastewater plant and gain about like a 500,000 gallon per day of permitted flow. And that's significant for us because we see that keeps us well within the proposed permit.
So on the pumping from east to main,
Yeah.
We're not closing then the east plant, we'll still be using it. Won't be using it at all. That's what I had originally thought. So how do you get extra capacity? You get through the building of the more capacity at the main plant.
Yes, yeah, so we're building.
The main plant is covering what's being pumped plus.
Yes, plus east, so it's main plant plus east plant, which, so the main plant permit limit is 5.2 million gallons, and just to give you scale, east plant is 1 million, and it's currently treating about 500,000. So we bring it over and gain 500,000, which is 10% or more of the capacity. So we have that added capacity, which we see as a lot of value because it's not easy to just go to the state and say, can we discharge more wastewater from our wastewater plant? There's already enough challenges in our current project, but that would be probably another one that's I would consider it potentially to be the highest challenge if we did do that at this time. Could be delaying our project. And anyways, it's an asset. Bringing it over, we have added permit capacity, and we're adding flexibility to where growth can happen, and we'll be able to have the growth without with the current plans without going above our permit limit.
The facility will still be there. It'll just take the input pipe and you'll pump it over to main plant, right? So there'll be a facility there that has to do that, but the clarifiers and all the other stuff will be shut down.
Right, yes, there will be a pump station, a large pump station, and that will use some of the existing tankage there. And we'll still have an administrative building. If you're familiar with the site, you can kind of see it right over the hill there. But there will be some areas in the site that will need to be demolished and to be taken offline.
And another one of the benefits of bringing all the flow over to main plant is that it'll get the tertiary treatment of the phosphorus reduction that we don't have at east plant or north plant.
Yeah.
So, and having the sewer shed be pretty much all of the city except for the north end means that the growth capacity now is much more flexible as where housing happens. But if housing happens in main plant, the south end, and we don't have the capacity, then even though it's capacity at east plant, we can't apply it to a south end development the way we will be able to once we merge the plants.
Right. Yep. All right, so jump into the kind of image of this. This is you can't read the words on here, so I'll just kind of do a quick overview of the plan. This is also in the memo where you should be able to read it pretty well. We currently have these 4 secondary clarifiers. The project is likely adding a 5th year. This line right here is that old bike path line, and is the property line between Perkins Pier and the wastewater plant that you're probably familiar with. So this is the area that we would be expanding into Perkins Pier. And
It's a parking lot.
yeah, it's a parking lot. Yep. And so I'll talk about that coordination with our our key stakeholders in a minute after I go through the improvements. The existing aeration tank is down here at our wastewater plant. This one will be quite a bit larger and add the necessary redundancy that we don't have right now. And that tankage is not in very good condition. There's pretty significant cracks in that tank. So this is a very large addition to our plant. That as well as the tertiary filters. So those two pieces are kind of like the big improvements that are happening. And then a lot of the other work is associated with providing the equipment needed to run those new systems, as well as replacing old outdated equipment, like retrofitting our existing. So let's see if there's anything else it's really notable. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. Those are the new, this is the phosphorus that would be going in down here. So we build the aeration tanks first. We would take these aeration tanks offline after that comes online. And then we'd be able to build the phosphorus treatment right where those old aeration tanks are. And I think that's easier said than done, but that's the plan. And there is certainly a sequencing element to this project that will be challenging.
The aeration tanks, is that where the bacteria are?
Yep.
And that's what I remember on the tours, you could see those things where those walls were
Yes.
significantly compromised.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I don't recall whether the aeration tanks from the 50s or the 70s, but it's one of those early iterations that, yes, we need more capacity, and it is time for those aeration tanks to be rebuilt to our modern operational needs and the future capacity.
Yep. So let me just touch briefly on the stakeholders that I also bring up in the memo. We have multiple stakeholders, including the public that will be, our plan is to have represented at a minimum through the TUC, the DPW Commission, and City Council. So we'll be going to those venues fairly frequently. We have Parks and Rec as probably one of the biggest, most impacted players. We do have ownership of this property, but we have the interests of Greater Burlington in mind as well. So we need to do it right because we will be losing parking. But currently the goal is to hopefully have enough parking to meet the needs of the marina, like the current people that come there and you use the park for that specific use. That's the bare minimum. And so there's ongoing coordination we have with parks, and it's going well, but it's definitely not done. We have coordination with BED because we need to move electrical lines, the railroad, because they're here and they're going to be impacted. We've already talked with them and they're agreeable so far. We have the state, because the state will be a permitting agency for many permits that we need, and they're also going to be a funding partner. And then I thought it was worthwhile to say that the operators are also stakeholders, because we need to make sure that this plant meets the expectations and they're fully engaged throughout the whole process to know how this thing is going to run. So the cost, the 127 million is the estimate from the bond value. And in the memo, we have fluctuating costs over the last couple of years that have been, we have line items that show what goes up and what goes down. And after some geotechnical work, they did some bare minimum geotech, and they're like, oh, there's some soils that might be a concern. So they added a large placeholder of potential costs in there. And that's why we have a range of, okay, currently the estimate's at 131 to 145, but don't think we're at the point where that's raising alarm bells, especially in conversations with them. They're saying, okay, we need to now go and do further investigation. That assumption is the highest that our soil improvements costs would be. So they're talking like $9 million of major soil improvements. We think that number will come down. There's also structural costs that we think will come down because they were being very conservative there. And we're also committed to bringing it down because we know through value engineering, we already know items that can come off while still delivering the core elements of this project. We just need to we're going to have the CMAR on board soon, the construction manager at risk, and that will bring even more industry understanding into the cost. So as we move into the next phase of design, we're expecting to get more detailed and better costs to better refine where that cost is going to be and how we get to the number that we can live with. Because currently the number is 127, and that's what we're aiming for. So I just wanted to share though that that cost estimate does show that because we're not cutting anything from the project yet, and we have conservative numbers in there.
So just to clarify, you're saying that it's below the 131 to 145, or it's closer right now? It looks like it may be within range or on the lower end of the range. I wasn't really.
The full project is within that range currently. We haven't done the level of soil investigation to be able to more narrowly define the actual soil management costs.
But you think the range is good still?
We do for the full project, but if we value engineer, take out scope items, write grants, we're early in the project, but we've heard from you all that, within everything we can do to bring this project in on budget, we're gonna work our tails off.
And that budget again is 127.
For the bonds, yes, for stage one.
Yeah.
We have to push some items into stage two or not do as much building envelope work as opposed to the core industrial processes. We're gonna have to make those decisions.
Yeah, so they're right now, there's no value engineering in these numbers. They're conservative. Yeah, so I mentioned CMAR only a little bit in this presentation. I think they're going to be a really key player, construction manager at risk. That's a collaborative project delivery method similar to what the high schools used. It's appropriate for a project that is this big and has a lot of complexity like this one. So we're looking forward to moving forward with that versus kind of going in with the blinders associated with bidding out a project and then getting an unknown result.
It was hugely successful with the high school project. They're under budget right now. Barrett and I had tour last night. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They had to do some value engineering, Matt.
That's right.
They came in, so I think the CMAR can be instrumental in keeping this on track and maybe finding other scenes.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that, and we think we have a qualified candidate that we're going to be interviewing this time, or I think next Tuesday. So that as we get through this month, over the next month, we're getting the scope figured out with our engineer, Wright Pierce. They're currently at the 30% design mark. That's what we have approval for. We're going to be seeking approval for their contract through 100% final design. The construction manager at risk, as I said, we're going to be, if all goes as planned, which we're optimistic about, that we would be seeking proposals from them to get a scope together for getting us through final design with them. And the construction manager owner advisor is also similar to what they did at the high school. They did a project management consulting firm. That will be someone that is adding capacity to our team to help don't manage such a complex project, and they're gonna be, certainly narrowed in on the cost estimating piece, the scheduling piece, and other quality control measures. So they're not gonna have very much overlapping with the engineer that's on this project, but they will when it comes to cost and schedule. That's where we want everyone looking at that. And also part of our request this fall will be for amended clean water SRF loan. So that'll just be the cost for those different consultants to move forward through design. We're going to be seeking to amend that loan going forward. So I think that's the end, and I open it up to any questions.
Okay, so my question, based on the issues that we've had, the different construction projects, not water, is what's the worst case scenario? What would be a sort of the collateral impacts of that, and what is our planning, our contingency planning for that? Because when I think about, so great streets, problem, delays, collateral is the impact on the businesses. That's just an example, right? So you got a construction project, we've got construction for new housing that's gonna maybe happen right here, a couple of hundred, maybe, as many as 400 units right around the time that the stuff is getting built. That's where my head is going. So I'm just trying to understand as we're looking through this again, what some worst case engineering issues would be, what might happen if they came to pass, and what are we thinking we're going to do to not to at the very least minimize and deal with it all.
Right. Yeah. So a few things. Yeah. When it comes to that, there's, I guess, Main Street, Great Street, there was a cost concern. I think having a CMAR on board, that was a design design and then bid project. This is going to be a CMAR, so we would know cost issues sooner than what they found out for Main Street. So that is certainly a concern, and I don't have the answer to if it's a major concern yet. Hopefully it won't be. Other items that come to mind, and we can, come up with, and this is part of what the CMAR will do, coming up with like a risk register, all the different elements. But from, I think on the public side, things that come to mind are if we don't have the phosphorus filter on time, we would be potentially hitting a permit limit that we're not, aligned with, so we wouldn't be able to meet that limit.
And the consequence of that.
The consequence of that is, I'm not sure.
All construction stops.
Right.
You're not building that C-Cord project until they get that.
And then so the C-Cord project, we're comfortable with the current one. We provided a capacity letter that with our current treatment facility, we're comfortable taking on that project that's currently, but we haven't looked at, phase 2 or 3 or whatever come up yet. But we do have those on the, we've kind of forecasted what the pretty big near-term projects are, and being able to take that one, for example. But we are aware that, there could be a phase 2 and 3, and that's what we do have in our list of projects that will fit within our new plan. And if all those come on within the next few years, then we may have to say no, right? But that seems like a pretty far-fetched scenario, just based on, we've had projects trickling in over the last, I've seen them over the last 10 years, right? We've had City Place, and so if it kind of keeps pace that's not too out of the ordinary, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Every policy maker at a certain high level is looking to increase the trickle from the last few years to
Correct.
a fire hose.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, so go to the new north end. Yeah, no, it's, there is a lot of capacity out there for sure.
There you go.
The point of getting this done on time, on budget, is that one, we can handle new economic development opportunities, and two, we avoid a permit violation with the state of Vermont. What that violation would be and how we negotiate and work through that, you know, we hope we don't have to get there.
I guess that the point of my question, and you sort of answered it, is we absolutely do need, and if the CMAR is the way that we are going to be addressing it, is really looking at, okay, what are the problems that we could run into, or that are foreseeable, right? You can't, if you can't foresee it, right, you know,
Right.
because it's totally hidden, then what
Right.
you're gonna do. But, you know, with that kind of diligence, and then understanding what the consequences are and who is involved, and then what we're gonna do as things are going. And that's just sort of like your disaster planning.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm asking about and encouraging
Yes.
on this, because it's a big project. We need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are the big ones. Just another small one that came to mind is not necessarily small. We might be impacting the bike path, and
Oh, yeah,
Thinking
most
about-
definitely.
thinking about how that would be done, you know, like, and I can't promise that this would be the case, but thinking about whether that could be like winter construction or something like that, so there's less users out there.
Yeah,
It's like when they did the regatta, they do the same, probably reroute, right? Same kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, but that's fine.
In terms of the CMAR, are you having a competitive process where you're trying to, do you have more than one? Proposal?
we bid it out, and we had it out for a month and a half. We sent it to 8 different contractors directly. We did just hear back from PC Construction, and that's who we're gonna be interviewing next week. The state was satisfied with, you know, the documented outreach and process that we've been following. So we're not concerned at this point. You know, we still want to make sure that we're vetting and following all the processes, and we'll certainly be sharing the outcome of that with folks on city council. So more to come on that process.
We will do the steps and put together a recommendation. If we can't get to a recommendation or a successful negotiation, we could look at rebidding. So we will keep the city's best interest in mind as we proceed with this process.
You know, I think it's great. And like, again, I'll just say that the whole idea of like, everybody's like sort of maxed out, you know, in terms of their capacity. So that brings somebody on like a CMAR, will help us to have someone singularly focused on this one giant project.
Yep.
And have it be their, you know, thing that they do every day. So.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I mean, the bike path relocation, that if there are going to be issues in terms of that interruption there, that'll be a big thing to pay attention to
Absolutely.
and deal with. I don't know what what the solution is, you know, maybe with railroad and using the road and cutting the corner, so to speak.
Yeah, I want to just say Parks has been a really awesome partner here. This is a hard pill for them to swallow. They've been professional. They've been helpful. We are looking at ways, for example, of potentially paving the remainder of the parking lot to give them back something that is more resilient or less maintenance heavy than what they currently have. And I just want to say I couldn't be more pleased to be having productive conversations with them on the whole range of issues. But yes, the bike path construction phase, a little too early to talk about that approach and schedule, but you know, it's going to be a key discussion point.
Any other counselors have questions? See, back is hand raised, and I think Merrick's all set. You're all set, Merrick, for the questions? Okay. Well,
I'm
thank
all
you for the-
set. This is very helpful. Thank you.
and thank you for the update. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and close that item, I guess, and move on to the director's report.
I'll be really quick. A couple things. One, we were really excited to have a successful celebration for Main Street 2 weekends ago, I believe it was. And just the number of departments, divisions, every division was involved, and every department we think was involved other than the airport, which shows a tremendous community effort here. Unfortunately, Friday was great. Saturday was a washout. In terms of our celebration event, still went on, but there were fewer intrepid folks than I would have wanted. But overall, we're very excited. There still is some punch list items. Lower Church Street is still finishing up some sidewalk work. BED is fixing a defect on some of the poles, and we will get through the punch list items in the next couple of weeks. And the second thing, unaccepted streets, that will be coming to you all hopefully next month or the month after. And that one will have suggested groupings of streets to tackle. I am very pleased to say that the tech services team and the water resources team are partnering very well together, and will have a full matrix looking at what are the implications of accepting a street from a water utility perspective and from a surface investment perspective. And we're overlaying those needs and coming up with what I believe will be a pragmatic plan for you to review within the next month or two. I'm hoping to bring it in August, and that's the plan unless something extenuating happens. Rob, anything else to add?
We will be paving a series of north end streets in the next few weeks, so we expect that to start, if everything's still on target, as early as next week. And then once Bennington Court is, which I think they're wrapping up the water work this week, they'll do that street as well.
So there's no changes in because people saying, I don't think they're gonna pave my street this year. I said, yeah, they are. Gonna be anything.
No changes.
They got the letter, they're getting paid.
No expectation readjustment at this time.
Yeah. Next to the counselor items, do any counselors have items?
So I love the Main Street opening celebration. I got a chance to stroll down, and the thing that struck me was, okay, who is going to deal with maintaining the plantings? Who is going to be watering the trees and stuff? And not just over the first year when they may be under warranty, but ongoing. And that led me to just remind myself that those little short these protected bike lanes on Elmwood after Grant. It's just over to Peru. It's a really short section. And there is a scrub tree on the greenbelt. So I don't know if it was an intentional that continually, spreads out into the bike lane there, meaning that I am not going to break my way through that. I'm going to go in the street.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense. I mean, pavement is a whole other question. But it just sort of leads me to the question of whose responsibility is it? And when I've asked these questions, like I was on a tour of ash trees with BJ, it was clear that we have a little bit of non-coordination going on. At least that's the way it seemed. Not my job. And so I wanted to raise those issues there.
Yes. Thank you. My response will be yes, in my budget presentation and Phil, Director Lewis's presentation for FY27 was that our FY28 budget is gonna have to tackle O&M, operations and maintenance of our assets. Within this last year, we have just launched new assets. We already were struggling to maintain our assets. Now we have new assets and we are not fully resourced to maintain them. And you heard that from the city arborist, who is very articulate in expressing that. And frankly, it's helpful to hear that we can't adequately maintain what we have. And so what staff is doing, working cross-departmentally, is developing some ideas and proposals that we'll be bringing to the council here in the coming months so that we can evaluate as part of FY28 how we resource that differently.
Great.
Because magic will not maintain our assets.
Absolutely. So I would love us to have on a future agenda here a report. Maybe it's preliminary to going to the council as a vetting of that in a way that allows us to see the inventory. You know, we're a small enough place that we all get around and experience it and then bring it back. And we're a small city masquerading as a cosmopolitan area. So that's the first item. Thank you on that. I would also request a future report on the traffic data on the Maple and Pine and King and Pine traffic stuff and the issues related to particularly left lanes, left-hand turns that we've had. So I'd love to see data on that. I've been trying to go up to Main Street, as was and I'm happy that there is the sign. I don't know whether it used to be closer to the intersection or not, as people are going there is sure enough. But I think that's the follow-up that I would like on that. And then for the committee itself, that coalition on mass transit that we voted last week or last month, there is going to be, I believe, a meeting on Tuesday this coming. It's a remote meeting, 9 to 11 or 12 to 2. And if anybody would like me to share the contact, either you can tell me now and I will pass that on. So that I was going to go.
I would like to.
Okay.
I would like to go.
Yeah. Merrick, any?
Yeah, me too. You could email me.
Becca?
Yeah.
And unless you say no, this statewide mass transit support coalition is meeting, and it's going to be talking about organizing. So it may be that it would be good, I think, if everybody on this committee can go. And unless you say no, I will pass your email on because it's going to be remote.
Yes, of course. Is there a date yet? Sorry,
it's looking like this coming Tuesday at either 9 to 11 or 12 to 2.
One or the other.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't set yet, as far as I know. That's and so I will. We're getting out early enough that I will send a message asking that you all be included on the invite list.
Great. Thank you.
And GMT is part of it. So Chapin, if you want to be added to such a thing,
right?
Would you?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
And we have a new chair of GMT board who is the other Burlington representative as well, Andrea Cecino. So sorry. So we'll loop her in as well.
Okay, well, I'll send it to you and then
great.
You can do this. They are making some progress in terms of other municipalities and organizations and their statewide focus also. So I don't know. That's it for me.
Colin Willard. great job with getting the pedestrian signals up. It's definitely, it makes a huge difference safety wise for pedestrians.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I haven't noticed that intersection being more clogged, more trafficked than, or more clogged than it usually is. But it's usually the Main Street intersection where the backup usually is. But that has changed, so I think it's going great. So thank you.
Great. We're excited too.
Anything, Becca?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
And I would just add to what Gene was asking about the Maple King data. When Corey had presented to us, those smart lights weren't active. I still don't know if they're activated or not. But it'd be interesting to add. They are, and they're sort of tuning themselves based on the traffic flows, or if they are, that would be interesting to hear what's happening with that, and if you've noticed anything and had to make any adjustments. With these.
Yes, so I think what is happening now is that they are counting traffic and congestion. So that's what they're doing. They are able to adapt slightly within a framework based on loads of traffic. So I think the presentation was to come back after 6 months after opening. Yeah. And so we are still planning to do that. That will allow traffic to settle, and I appreciate Councilor Bergman's comment about trying to take Main Street, and I've been trying to do the same, and it seems to be lessening some of the side street congestion that I've been witnessing. We will see when college comes back in and we get the crush of vehicles in the fall, how that introduces to the system. So we're still planning to come back. That should be, end of the year or January with a full first look at traffic.
And so, yeah, I think I concur that it is better to try to keep your travel north-south as soon as possible and not go all the way down to Battery. And then some of the anecdotes from there, but I had lunch at Handy's Diner, and Earl said that things were moving pretty good down there. It's one data point, but there you have it.
They would know. I mean, if it backs up there, such a long list.
He said it's working pretty good.
All right.
That's
helpful.
It's anecdotal, but nevertheless.
And that's the appreciation for letting things settle, because I know as soon as something opens up first day, all sorts of posts online, and traffic takes a while. So thank you.
And then just general appreciation for the attention to the new north end. We have lots of new sidewalks in my neighborhood directly.
Yeah.
It's I know it's appreciated well. So thank you for that. That's Councilor Items. So next meeting tentatively scheduled for August 25th. That's the 4th Tuesday at 5:30.
Yeah, that's the day I am not going to be here. I think I mentioned.
It should be find a different day.
I mean, don't have to on my account. I'm out that. I'm out in Maine that whole week.
Nice.
I am around the 18th, the week before that, if that is an option.
Is there interest in doing it? You have an interest. Yeah, 18th or 25th. Yeah, either works. Becca, do you have a preference?
Did you say the 18th or the 25th?
Correct.
Let me just pull this up. The 18th does not work for me. The 25th, the 25th should work.
By all means, I'm the one, the 25th is a regular meeting, and so I'm asking you to switch.
We have a 4-person committee here, so we got a little redundancy.
It all works. I'm just saying, just that.
So it seems like we'll tentatively schedule the 25th. Well, we won't tentatively.
We'll schedule for the 25th. that is helpful to staff. I know that one of the lead unaccepted streets program managers, 25th is better for that. So
That's all good.
if that's flexible, let's lock that in. Rob, we're good for that location, for this location.
Yeah, we are scheduled here.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and that's the end of our agenda, so absent of objection, I'll adjourn us at 7:05.